Welcome to another virtual Apres. Today we have Eric Lipton joining us, and we'll start off with our quote: "Raise your words, not your voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder." And that's by Rumi. Right. So thank you, Eric, for being here. Just a quick introduction here. Eric is a current 3-term member of the PSIA AASI National Alpine Team and a seasoned ski pro of over 20 years. Eric has traveled throughout the country and the world, coaching coaches, instructors, and U.S. ski team athletes on the finer points of sliding on snow. Just as important as Eric's on-hill coaching skills are Eric's ideas and successes in working with snow sports directors and instructors. Eric has written numerous published articles and presentations teaching instructors how to create more meaningful connections with first-time skiers and riders. And Eric, thank you for being here. And today we're going to be diving into the Teaching Snowsports Manual. If you want to follow along, we'll be referencing page 26 through 27. Eric is would we say you're a supporting author?
Yeah, I guess you could say I was a supporting author. I think that's how it's listed in there somewhere.
Probably multiple times, and heavily appreciated. So what I want to have you start us off on is if you could just talk to us just a little bit about the history and kind of the general overall meanings behind what it is that you brought to the manual here with trust, likability, and expertise.
Sure. Yeah, so that's the section that I felt most comfortable. I felt like I had some background in history and a little bit of specialty in is relationship management. And I feel like a big part, I have a background in sales and business as well as ski instruction. And the idea of connecting with people, establishing relationships, finding common ground is all really intimately intertwined in sales, I came to trust, likability, and expertise because they really kind of epitomize the 3 core elements of how to establish a relationship. And so they're not new by any means. They're pretty old concepts, but they were in a different language. They were obviously interpreted a little differently. And they're 2,400 years old, these 3 concepts, 2,400 years old. So they go back to ancient Greece, where Aristotle actually came up with these tenets in a paper he wrote called Rhetoric. And in Rhetoric, he identified these 3 qualities that must be established in order to be persuasive. And persuasion is often thought of, it's got different contexts, but it's really, getting people to see things our way, to come around to our way of thinking, to allowing us to lead them through something. Persuasion is pretty broad in context, right? So he said, in order to win debates, for him it was about winning debates in Greek philosophy. We're concerned with getting people to agree with us and think the way we think and book ski lessons. But he called them ethos, pathos, and logos. And I don't know if anyone on the call remembers these from school, from philosophy class, but ethos being credibility of character, and having ethics. So that loosely translates to trust. And pathos being pathetic appeal in its most literal definition, but eliciting passion, emotion, and connection to the audience. So that's the likability part. And then logos is logical appeal. It means is there knowledge about the topic and logic behind it, and that's your expertise. So trust, likability, and expertise are sort of those in modern language, the 3 tenets that Aristotle talked about and wrote about years and years ago. And that's kind of formed the basis for that relationship management section. If we can establish those 3 elements, then that really goes a long way in us being able to form a relationship with our students, which ultimately is the goal.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So give us let's start moving into each one of these traits. So starting with trust,
Sure.
can you walk us through, like, what does that look like? Paint a little bit of a picture, like, through this pathway of what it might look like for someone to apply some of these skills and where they are rooted, and a little bit of how does someone achieve these? How does someone garner this and be able to use it themselves?
Yeah, great question. We talk about trust a lot, as you know, as if we hold it on this very high pedestal, which it should be. And there's lots of ways to establish trust, and we seem to bat this around a lot, and everybody thinks they have their own way, or they know the answer. And I feel the same way. I feel like establishing trust is about two words. It's about showing commitment. Mm-hmm. And that's why friendships made during times of war are everlasting. If you think about Band of Brothers, when you show your undying commitment to another person, trust is established. Bakers give you 13 donuts to show their commitment to delivering more than you expect. The word Lanyap is a word from the Cajuns that says getting more than you expect. It's like more than a pound of sugar. And really skilled salespeople are good at establishing trust very quickly. That's things like, so again, showing commitment, helping people buckle their boots, ensuring your client's skis are tuned and waxed, to volunteering to make dinner plans or arrangements, being available for someone. When we show our commitment to someone else, that person then tends to trust us, right? That's why they say trust is earned, right? It takes time to develop it, but continuously showing commitment in one way or another builds trust. So that's sort of the broad base, how we can establish that on that first greeting becomes really important. In the first third, I say kind of, you win or lose the day in the first 30 seconds. So you got to ace the greeting. Consider your remarks really carefully when you're approaching your student. You're observing them, but expect that they're also observing you. You learn their name, you use it often. And then you find something you genuinely like about a person. And that's I feel like that idea that giving a compliment goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing I want to interject here is that one of the things that quickly pops up for me is that oftentimes for me, there's a really fine line of, I'm going to say it, cheesiness that can show up when when someone is, or it being inauthentic, where someone is using my name so much that I'm like, really? Like, I'm the only person standing here. If you keep saying Melodie, I'm calling BS, and where you can, someone, at some point there's a threshold where I start actually wondering, what do you want from me? Right? Like, what are you trying to gain out of this over-invested relationship? Can you walk us into understanding where that fine line is, especially when thinking about someone who doesn't maybe have a lot of those experiences where they know exactly where it is, like how much still retain some closeness to their own authenticity before they move into practicing something that's actually going to go overboard.
Okay. I think I understand the question.
Okay.
So I guess, like, you certainly, authenticity is a big deal in our world right now. Authenticity, transparency, being in touch with reality, right? Because there's certainly a departure from that in a lot of what we're seeing on the news and so forth. But the platinum rule still exists, right? Do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Because we're all different. So the golden rule of do unto others as you would want done unto you, that may not be the case, but do unto others as they would have you do unto them. And treat people how they would like to be treated, not necessarily how you would like to be treated. Maybe serves us well there. There's only like pacing of managing the interaction throughout is where the other two tenets, I suppose, come in, right? Like, you don't establish trust just at the greeting and then that person says, oh, okay, I trust you eternally now forever. But as the relationship builds and as time progresses, that's where you have opportunities to show commitment in other ways. And that's where it becomes a much more genuine exchange versus a one-way street. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
I think you are. So I think what I was looking for is like help ease us in a little bit to this idea of grabbing what you offered as being a prescription of using a name a lot and offering specific compliments or accommodations, because if in the first 30 seconds or even first 5 minutes, right, I'm using the person's name a lot, I've already called to make them dinner reservations, and I've done all of these other things that are kind of in that wow space. I feel like at some point, I almost think of like a glass of lemonade. If you add all the sugar at once, it might be too sweet. And being able to offer a little bit at a time actually can make it just right.
Yeah, I mean, that what you said, that's just not realistic, right? Like you do all these things, you've known for 30 seconds, and it's like, okay, you're interfering with your likability now, right?
Excellent. Well, let's pivot with that into likability.
Okay, fair enough.
And get into what that looks like.
So how do you make somebody like you, right? This is like the $64,000 question. Like, what is likability? What is charisma? There's discussion. Are people born with charisma? And I think the answer is no. I don't think babies are charismatic. I think people learn this. This is nurtured, not nature. But how do you make somebody like you? And I think in our world, it's about exuding passion. It's being passionate about what we're doing, and it's demonstrating humility. Those are the core, I think, components of that. I think we relate best to people who show a vulnerability, who show they're human. And like, we love comedians who are self-deprecating because we can relate, right? And we've all been there. And in the movies, we love the underdog because for the entire film, we see their flaws and we establish a connection with this character. They show humility, and showing your humility displays your humanity. Now, there's a few caveats to this, right? Like, you can't let your humility or likability interfere with your credibility. So establish credibility first, then humility. So, you're the instructor, you got the uniform on, you know the mountain, you ski every day, you got the fancy equipment. Like, there's some credibility that just comes with being on the job. And so you don't want to, you can't let your likability interfere with that, right? So you got to establish that first, that you're confident. The other caveat is you can't let vulnerability compromise that credibility. And here's what I mean by, here's an example of that. A psychiatrist could get away with spilling his coffee and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not that good with my hands." A surgeon cannot.
I like that. And
so we can't say, you might say, okay, how am I going to show humility? Well, you're not going to start falling all over the mountain. You're not going to say, I have no idea when the trails were groomed. You're not going to say, I don't know what that chairlift's called. Like, that damages your credibility. So finding other ways to be humble that doesn't sacrifice that. I don't want to get operated on by a surgeon who says he's not very good with his hands.
Yeah, me neither. Amazing, especially if it's something I want to be able to use again.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you give us a couple of positive examples of what that humility might look like in action?
Yeah, sure. I think it can relate to another person's specialty. So admitting that, like, just admitting we don't know everything, right? And asking questions about that person's, professional or personal, whatever's appropriate. But like, okay, this person's an attorney. Well, what do you do what do you do on a daily basis, and what's that like? And asking questions shows that you don't have all the answers. And so what was it like to grow up in that town? I've never been to that state before. What's it like there? How's your weather been? Showing that you don't know everything, if it's about another sport, you don't have to be an expert in every sport, in every movement, and everything. So asking questions is a very, like you pointed out earlier, you can go too far and it can be an annoyance, but it's a very endearing thing. These people love to talk about themselves. So asking some appropriately probing questions, and admitting that you don't have all the answers is a sign of humility.
I love that. Thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate that. It really kind of connects back into our manual as well, and talking about the idea of tell me more.
Yeah.
And like looking for something simple. Hey, I see that you're a, whatever team fan. Tell me what that relationship is like for you. Like, are you a big fan? Like just get them moving. Maybe you'll find out you grew up in the same town, or not, or it's a type of environment you know nothing about, and you get an opportunity to learn.
And then actually being interested, right? Like we spend a lot of time trying to be interesting, and if we were trying to be more interested, it kind of boost our likability score a little bit there. We're often caught being guilty of, like, okay, we ask a question, like normal small talk in everyday life. You ask a question, and before the answer comes, you're already thinking about the next question. It's like, where you from? How long you've been there? It's like blah, 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 like really basic stuff, right? But rather than just, where you're from, how long you've been there, it's, okay, where did you grow up? What was it like growing up there? And then using the information to ask a follow-up question versus just skipping it, right? So if you're genuinely interested in someone, you appear more likable.
Eric, this is so poignant. Last week we talked about active listening, and we moved into some of the depths of what it looks like to stay with the speaker and to let them continue to express themselves instead of bringing it onto yourself as an attempt to try to create connection, but losing the opportunity for that speaker to continue.
Sure. Yeah, we're all guilty of that from time to time. And we've got to be careful of that, like listen to understand, not to respond, or whatever the phrase is. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'd love for you to dive in just a little bit about, like, you've talked about passion, vulnerability, humility specifically, and we touched on a little bit about like these things, a little bit of the how, but moving into that teachability. So you mentioned that, that the difference between these charisma being innate versus taught or learned. And then if you could just speak just a little bit on what does it look like to teach these skills? I think so often we just put this big blanket over and say, oh, you just have it or you don't, right?
Yeah.
And we're hearing and you're talking about how that's not true, but what does it look like to teach them?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know those people in the locker room who seem like they're always booked, like, and frankly, they're not hanging out the locker room. They don't come to a lot of trainings. Sometimes they're older staff, but they're just like always booked. They're never not booked. Like their request book of clients is forever long, right? And so we've got this. We're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, right? Physiological needs, safety. And then at the top, there's self-actualization and self-esteem. And then in the middle, there's this love and belonging part that we kind of skip over. We're like, yeah, sense of belonging, whatever that means. But that's the level that these relationship rock stars, that's where they live. That's the bread and butter. They're able to bring people in and make them feel connected to the sport. They achieve deeper, more meaningful relationships because they do these things that we're talking about. They're the ones that are invited to the boathouse and the houseboat off the Florida coast, right? They're never around. They're never hanging out because they're awesome at what they do. Their guests return as much for their own their guests return for their approval as much for their own improvement. Like, I can't wait to show this person this. Like, they live at that level. So, and we're all good at this. Like, everyone has this in them, because we interact with people we love and care about. We interact with family, we interact with friends in these ways. But for some reason, we don't bridge that gap from, okay, here's how I treat my family and friends. And in no way am I saying like every client should be as, like, it's not always the same, right? There's personal and professional relationships, but can we take all the good stuff that we do in our personal life as humans, with family, with friends, to make people feel loved and belonged and welcomed and comforted, and bring it into our job as ski pros a little bit? There is some blend there, that we can all do this. We're all charismatic at the right times. We're all charismatic with certain people. The skills are there. So the one burning question though is, how do you do it in 20 minutes? And that's hard, right? That's hard. Like, teaching that is hard, but one way is complimenting people works really well. And it's such an easy thing to do. You can compliment you can make it up as you go. You know, someone shows up with a new pair of skis or snowboard, you say, wow, that's great gear. I love that I demoed that. It's fantastic how you love it. It's so cool. Love your jacket, love your goggles. Like, that's the obvious stuff, the sports teams. But you can compliment people on anything else you can think of. Like, hey, if it's a sunny day, hey, I love you standing in the sun. You're really smart to stand in the sun because it's so warm, it feels so great. Or they're standing in the shade. Hey, it's a good idea to stand in the shade to get out of that sun for a minute. My gosh. It's raining all day at the mountain. People still show up. Yo, you're really smart to come here to ski in the rain. There's nobody here today. Like, even though, like, maybe it's not something you would do, but compliments work. They just work. You can obviously go too far. Like, you can go too far with anything, but complimenting people works. A second technique, I suppose, if you call it, is validating. So that's kind of validating those decisions is good. Mirroring works really well. So, and this can be awkward if not done with a little bit of care. So the echo technique, where, you know, if someone is demonstrative and boisterous and loud, then mirroring that as well, like communicating with them in the same way. If someone is very small and nervous and shy, you being demonstrative and loud is probably not the right formula. So mirroring body language, mirroring tone is useful, because we relate to people who are like us. And then another way is to tell a secret, and that's broad, but give them a little piece of information not everyone knows. Like, bring them in, right? Let them know they're an insider, and as a way to, you know, the best place, you know, we should really go here, and if you like soup, this place serves the best soup, and here's the side of the mountain to start on because the sun hits it. Or you're staying at the such and such hotel. Well, the person at the front desk is blah blah blah, and they're fantastic, and they love chocolate, and you do that, and they'll give you a late check. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Like, you know, and if you've been in town, you know your way around town, then, and you have that expertise, then you can share those kinds of things. So there's a couple of techniques that help kind of move those, make you appear more likable, more charismatic, more build a better relationship in a short amount of time.
I love that. So I heard compliments.
Yeah.
And specifically, you moved into a compliment around decisions that they made, as well as just maybe something they had. So you chose that ski, or you chose to come on the rainy day, etc., and making that the thing that was the great choice and that you can compliment them on.
It's just validation. So
validation.
Validating,
yes.
You know, and you could do that. A compliment is a form of validation. But sorry, go ahead, interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, please. And then mirroring, but matching, which also moves back into our show on nonverbal and verbal communication. You know, each one of those we talked about matching. And so emphasizing that. And then I also heard you say, tell them a secret. I hear insider tip.
Yeah.
is what almost comes to mind. It's like there's a sweet stash of powder over here that I know at my home mountain, and I use, and when I'm run out of things, I use that. You know,
Yeah.
Especially on a day where it just seems like everything is skied out.
Totally.
You know, and just having some back pockets. And I'm almost thinking kind of back to, you know, if we're thinking in that level 1 prescription phase and we're acquiring these skills, is grab a couple of easy pick things that you can reach in your back pocket to be until it becomes fluent and adaptive.
Perfect. Yeah.
You know, because I'm going to guess, and please direct me here, Eric, is it most likely, you know, using your example of soup, you know, if you happen to use the soup example a lot, it's probably not really going to be a miss. If you say they have the best soup here, you know, if you like soup, like that's really not going to be a miss.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, you can love that. You can repeat. These can be repeated. Yeah, for sure.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I love that. Awesome. Can I ask you a few questions that are a little bit more directed to you?
Sure.
Excellent. All right. Describe an average moment for you that brings you joy.
Describe an average moment that brings me joy.
Yes.
In ski life or in anything?
Anything.
Okay. How about this? And I was thinking about this the other day. I really enjoy, and this is probably, I don't think this is that unusual. I love sitting outside in the morning and having a cup of coffee on my back deck. Just early morning, hot coffee outside, even on a hot day.
I hear you.
Yeah, I get that gives me a lot of joy.
I love that. Thank you. What is a book you're currently reading or have read recently?
Okay. A book I'm currently reading is called it's called The Buddha and the Badass. And
oh, sweet.
Yeah, and has nothing to do with Buddhism. Don't think it's but it's called The Buddha and the Badass. And it's a business book. I read a lot of business books. And it's about balancing the two sides of every spirit, I suppose. But the badass part of us that's you know, innovative and forward thinking and wants to do things and take action and achieve, with the more spiritual side, about the humanistic side of people and society, and how, you know, finding your inner spirit that can make you successful. So I'm not necessarily a super spiritual person, but this is, I'm just getting into this book, and I really like it. And I'll know more as I read through it, but that's so far what it's about. The Buddha and the Badass.
I am looking forward to hearing about it.
Okay.
Amazing. I love that. What's your favorite snack?
My favorite snack. Gosh, that changes, right? Doesn't that change for everybody? Like, yeah, I'm into this right now, and I'm into this right now.
Totally. How about right now?
Right now? Okay. This is not that much fun, but I found these refrigeratable protein bars that you keep in the fridge, and they're really tasty. And protein bars are tasty. It's kind of a hard thing to come by, but I found a box of these, and they're called the Perfect Bar. Perfect protein bar. And maybe they've been around a long time. I've just discovered them, but right now I'm kind of into those.
I love that. Do you have a podcast that you've binged on or are loving?
Let's see. I mean, I listen to a lot of, I was listening to a lot of Tim Ferriss podcasts, but not recently. I guess not right now. I mean, I'll listen to George Thomas's when he comes up with something that I find interesting. Check in on those. But no, otherwise, not currently. There's nothing that I'm really, really into at this very moment.
Fabulous. I appreciate your honesty.
Sure.
And best and worst parts of your job, directing it towards the ski industry job.
gosh, there are no worst parts. I mean, maybe that's not true. There's a balance to everything. Best part is working with resorts and trying to move the needle on beginner conversion, getting more people into the sport. That's really fun. And when we implement a program that instructors are inspired to work through and find that improves their guest experience and also their boosts employee morale, that's awesome. So I'm really enjoying that work that we're doing. And the worst part, I suppose, is, there's a lot of travel. Sometimes I'm on the road more than I want to be on the road.
I hear you.
But it means visiting resorts and spending time with passionate people. And I'm sure everybody you talk to probably says the same thing. It says like getting out in the country and the world and seeing people who love to share our sports is like the best part of our job.
Totally. There's always trade-offs. I hear things like answering emails as the worst part, or the traffic, or it's so interesting. It's the things that I think we choose to ignore because the good stuff is just so great.
Yeah. I mean, we work in the ski business. What could be better than that?
Not much. But I'm very biased.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Eric, how can people reach out to you?
Via email, I suppose, is just so you have my email, but it's also Eric at ericliptonskicamps.com. We do summer ski camps in South America.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's probably the best way. Eric at ericliptonskicamps.com. We won't be going this year, naturally, but we have chili trips every year that are phenomenal. If you haven't skied in summer in South America, it's an exceptional experience.
I hope that's in my future.
Yeah.
I will post your email on the show notes. So if anybody here, anyone listening in the future, is is interested in following up with a question, I'll make sure that's accessible. And I have saved our business for the end of the show today. So we are going to be taking a break. So we're going to take all of August off, and we're going to come back mid-September. Let your ski brain go for a few weeks. And when we come back, I've been working with Ann Shorling on a 2 to 3 part series on giving and receiving feedback. And we have a couple of other guests who are eager to get on and share parts that they've helped write within the manual or that they're working on with the People Skills Task Force. And really, we should be looking forward to seeing the performance guidelines come out shortly, which we will be diving into in the context of the show as well, and making sure that we have a deep understanding of what they are and can churn it just the way that we've been doing for the last several months. Before Eric signs off, does anyone have a question for him?
Nothing?
Yes, Jerry.
Okay. Hi, Eric. Thanks so much for joining us today. I just completed my first year as a ski instructor, and it was phenomenal. I'm totally hooked on it. Early retirement, this is now going to be my gig. What advice do you have? I mean, I dove headfirst into PSIA. I got my level 1. I was signed up for CS, Children's Specialist 1 before the shutdown. And I've been on anything that PSIA has offered online. What do you recommend for a first-year person who's really trying to take all this stuff in and also apply it? Like, what are some other things that I could be doing aside from getting my body in shape and kind of mastering the information and try to say it in English? What are the things you recommend?
Yeah, well, Jerry, and it sounds like you're doing all the right things, and you may be doing too much of them. That you can overwhelm yourself. We have so much. When I say we mean PSIA. There's so much material out there, and it's easy to go down a rabbit hole and really overwhelm yourself with the minutia of all the finer points of this, from biomechanics to and that'll all come, and you may have an appetite for that, but don't feel like you have to always be doing something. What will make you a successful ski pro is experience interacting with people in an outdoor environment, and skiing. We have too many, and I say this very broadly because I'm glad you asked this question. There are too many ski instructors in the world who think they're going to be better skiers by understanding it better, not by doing it. So be sure you're skiing. You're out there, you're doing it, you're thinking through your own movements, how you like to learn, how you perceive the sport, and being able to share your passion versus just saying, I'm going to pour more knowledge into my head and that's going to make me more successful. It's not always the case. We need people to become better skiers by being better, not by knowing more stuff. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be, angry at me for saying that, but God, that's the truth.
It feels good to hear that. And brilliant question, Jerian. Thank you. I love that.
Thank you for having me. Melodie, I appreciate the opportunity.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Just a short note. If you have been a regular on the show, Kirsten and I have been paying close attention, and we will actually send you an email for an announcement. However, you can, for when we're starting back up. Thanks, Howard. I appreciate you and everyone here. And but you can look for updates on Facebook and Instagram. That's a very reliable place. And remember, please reach out to me. I love hearing from you. It just kind of makes my day when someone shoots me an email and asks a question, because it gives me the sense that you really care about something that I'm putting a lot of energy into. So it feels really nice. So thank you. And mid-September, we're going to kick it off with a bang and get our ski brains rolling again, our snow sports brains, and pick this up right where we left off. Sounds good? All right, enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric.